Hi, everybody. Welcome to week number 3. So I'm just going to stare between two screens here, so bear with me. There's lots going on in week 3, and there's a lot of pre-work that I want to take you through before you start posting in the DQs. Thanks, everybody, for your participation in weeks 1 and 2, and we're actually going to build on some of weeks 1 and 2 in week 3. So away we go. For week 3, just remember that the goals for the week, we're going to discuss the conceptual phase of the research proposal. So we're actually going to loop back. You've already done some work in your 2 or 3 theoretical framework from week 1, and we're going to loop back to some of that. Develop research questions that frame and legitimize your research. Again, in week 2, you did some work on research questions, so you can already see how the same things keep coming back again and again. Identify a theoretical framework for your research and expand a literature search to explore research questions. So again, a reminder, in week 1, we started to dip our toe in the pool, figuratively, of theoretical frameworks. We're going back there this week. Week 2, you really took a look at the research questions. We're going back there too. So week 3 is about taking the first couple weeks and putting it together, packing it a little bit more tightly. Just a reminder, it's okay to use some of what you've used in previous weeks. So what I need you to do when you start week number 3, make sure you review the unit notes carefully. That's really important. They're quite thorough this week. Review the professor's notes on writing, because we're going to start thinking about things like literature reviews. There are a number of required readings for the week. Just a reminder that I always take notes on the required readings and share them with you. If you look in the course news and bulletins, you'll find some of those. I need you to go through the 2 Unit 3 activities. So there is Unit 3 Activity 1 and Unit 3 Activity 2. Neither needs to be handed in. These are for you to do so that you are prepared to do the DQs, but also they're going to help overall with your capstone project. So they certainly are worth the time to put into them. I would suggest doing those 2 activities first. One of them is just a template to keep track of different articles you may find. That's the second one. And so activity 1 is about knowing you're able to find peer-reviewed literature and able to search it. It's some tutorials, so work your way through that. And of course, the second one is about finding ways to organize or summarize your literature. And remember, there's more info this week about your theoretical framework. And of course, we started in week 1 and now we're looping back. So there's 2 discussion questions that I want you to think about this week, and clearly it's DQ 1 and 2. The first one, discuss the connections between a theoretical or conceptual foundation and your research inquiry. What theories are relevant to your research question and why? So if you're asking a question, I mean, basically this is an opportunity to link weeks 1 with link 2. To say, I have a particular interest in a topic, and here's how it fits into my theoretical framework. So I can think of all kinds of examples. One may be, if I'm really interested in my research questions are around Indigenous ways of knowing through narratives, certainly my conceptual framework that connects that probably is around something around constructivism or social construction, or learning and understanding by people's stories, as opposed to positivism that says there's only one right answer. Positivism would not be congruent or complementary to a research question about Indigenous ways of knowing. So I just use that as a specific example, but basically here's how I want you to think about the first discussion question in week 3. Week 1, you talked about your conceptual framework. Week 2, you shared your research questions. Now I want you to bring them together and say, I think these research questions that I talked about in week 2 are connected to what I was talking about in week 1 because, and that really is your answer to the first DQ question this week. So I hope you're seeing some pieces come together. We talked about theoretical frameworks in week 1. We talked about research questions in week 2. And now I want you to talk about how those 2 things can fit together in week 3 and how they complement each other. If you're finding that they contradict each other, you may want to rejig something, and please reach out if you're not sure how they fit together. The second discussion question, discuss the possibilities for journal writing or artistic expression in research. How important are reflection, reflexivity, and expression to support research? So if you look in my notes from the September 17th optional Zoom meeting that I posted in the course news and bulletins, we did talk about, within a critical literature review, it's permissible, and in fact, it's encouraged for you to weave your own narrative into this and say, not only am I looking at literature around a certain topic, but it turns out I have lived experience in that same area, and that's going to become, part of my critical literature review. It's not just what other people are saying, it's also how you live the same thing, and whether the literature you're looking at is, working with that or against that, or a little bit of both. So as you think about that question and what was said in the course readings about that, think about what it means to be reflexive with an X, because that's highly likely something that you're going to use, throughout the actual capstone where you talk about your own critical literature review likely. So I also want to remind people before we go this week that week 4, you're actually going to be asked to hand in for a grade a mini literature review. It's going to include an introduction where you talk about your research questions, a little bit of a conceptual framework, and then 5 to 8 articles. So the work you're going to do this week in week 3 in terms of understanding how to make sure you can do a search for peer-reviewed literature, in terms of talking about your research questions, your conceptual framework, my guess is that part of what you'll write this week will make its way directly into what you pass in week 4. And again, just a reminder, everything builds off everything else, so it's okay to self-plagiarize, and it's okay to use some of what you're going to write this week as part of your week 4 assignment that you hand in for a grade. So I'm going to give you more structure about the week 4 assignment that's due at the end of the week 4 throughout week 3, but I did want to just plant that seed and keep in mind that you are going to have a mini literature review due at the end of week 4, and some of the work you do this week can be added to that. So as always, reach out if there's any questions. A reminder to check the course news and bulletins frequently. And I do expect to have another optional Zoom meeting this coming Thursday, so just check the course news and bulletins. Have a great week 3, everybody.